Well, hello everyone. My name is Bruce Jans, and I just wanted to make a little instructor introduction video so that you know who you're dealing with throughout this course. You're going to get a lot of videos, some of them just me talking to you, some of them are going to be interviews that I'll have with other people, and some of them will be videos from other places. But before we start all of that, I thought it would be worth you knowing who you're dealing with. So my name is Bruce Jans, and I have been at UCF since 2003. Excuse me, I have a web page if you want to go to it here. It looks like that. It's really easy to get to. My last name, as you can see, is J-A-N-Z. So if you just put in Bruce Jans and put a dot between or before the last two letters, so .nz or bbja.nz, that works too, you'll get to this page. And this is my faculty page at UCF. It gives you links to all sorts of different things, including stuff I've written and stuff I teach and other things that I'm involved with as well. So that's a pretty quick way to get a sense of who I am and what I've done. And so I am originally Canadian. I'm still Canadian. I'm also American, dual citizen. I taught in Canada for 11 years after getting my PhD at the University of Waterloo, which is in Ontario. I taught in Alberta for 11 years before I came here, as I say, starting in 2003. I am technically a professor of humanities, even though my PhD is in philosophy. So what does that mean? Well, that means that I have a somewhat broader range of things that I work in. So I teach philosophy, obviously. I'm teaching philosophy here. But I also teach things like digital humanities. Some of you may have taken a course in that from me before. I taught that just last term. I teach African humanities. I teach, a wide range of things like that. And so I kind of move back and forth between a number of different areas, and they all kind of have a coherence in my own mind. They all relate to each other in various ways. So I have taught in Canada, as I say. I've taught here in the U.S., obviously. I've also taught in Kenya and in South Africa. I taught in Kenya in the 1990s, and I spent a lot of time there through a number of summers. I was in Rwanda for a summer 3 years after the genocide happened. The genocide was in 1994. I was there in 97. And so I got to know East Africa pretty well because of that, and more recently I've been more in South Africa. I taught at Rhodes, what's still called Rhodes University, and there's some controversy around that, which we can talk about in this course. I've been in Johannesburg and Cape Town and Durban and a number of other places in South Africa as well. I have a lot of friends and people I know across South Africa, the South African philosophical community. So I've been working in African philosophy probably since the mid-90s, I would say. And so I think it's worth thinking about what that means exactly. Obviously, I'm not black, I'm not African, I do not come from the continent, I come from Canada, I don't have any ethnic heritage, I'm not part of the diaspora of Africa, and so it is a legitimate question to ask, what is, a white guy like me talking about African philosophy? And that really gets into some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in this course around identity and about the issues that are going to come up in African philosophy and so forth. I was, pulled into African philosophy by a friend of mine. Really, the first time we met was in Kenya. His name was Emmanuel Eze. And Eze was a philosopher originally from Nigeria, but he had been in the U.S. He did his PhD in the U.S. at Fordham University in New York. And he was making a tour of basically departments of philosophy across the continent of Africa. And so he happened to be there when I was there. When I was there, and this must have been 1994 or so, something like that. And my spouse at the time was doing development work in Kenya, and so I would just go and try and meet all the philosophers I could and buy whatever philosophy books I could, and just kind of get to know what people were thinking about there. And so I was doing that. I was in the department, and Eze shows up, and we realized as we got to talking that we had more in common with each other than either of us had with really anyone else in the department. And so we stayed in touch after I came back to Canada. And he was what I would call a very entrepreneurial kind of philosopher. He was always had projects on the go. He was doing conferences, and he was doing edited collections, books, all sorts of different things. And so he sent me an email one day and says, "Hey, I'm doing this anthology on post-colonial African philosophy. You want to contribute a chapter?" And I said, "What do I have to say? I'm not from Africa. That's not my background." And yet I was very interested in many of the issues that Africans were interested in as well. It seemed to me that there was a lot being worked out within the African philosophical community that was also relevant to what I was interested in. And so, but I said to, I'm not sure I'm the right one for this. And he said, no, what we need to do is recognize that African philosophy is not just about identity or ethnicity or origin. It's a set of issues and questions that are of relevance to everyone. And I realized he was right. Having said that, there's a long history of people who look like me and have a background like me coming into Africa and telling Africans how things are and what, how things should be and how they should think and all the rest of that. And I did not want to be that person. And so, I did do a chapter for that book, and I very much enjoyed doing that chapter. It pulled me out of my comfort zone, out of the training that I had had. And from that point, Emmanuel and I did a bunch of different things. And then I started meeting other people and did things with them as well, and continued writing in the area. And so it's been a long time since I've been working in African philosophy. And for me, what I find is that Emmanuel's initial observation was absolutely right, which was, it's about the questions and the conversations and the texts and the concepts that have currency in that space. And so what you're going to see in this term is a lot of me thinking through that kind of thing, and a lot of what I've written, I think, has been found useful by Africans and others to try and think through how do you get around the idea that what happens in Africa is only about a specific set of people and a specific history. Because as soon as you say that, it does get locked into a fairly restricted area. And the rest of the world can easily just say, well, all of that stuff is about Africans for Africans, and we don't need to care about it. And the fact is, I think what happens in African philosophy is of relevance to everyone, in the same way that what has happened in feminist philosophy is not just for women and about women, it's relevant to everyone. It contributes something to the world of philosophy. And you're going to hear me return to that theme over and over again throughout this course. So that's part of my history in philosophy in general. I would broadly be, I guess, within a kind of hermeneutical, phenomenological tradition within philosophy, which appears within Africa in various ways as well. But I have also written in what would be normally considered analytic philosophy as well. And so I feel comfortable, kind of going back and forth across those kinds of disciplinary divisions, I suppose. So I still try, and at least before the COVID pandemic, I still tried to get back to Africa as often as possible. I had, as I say, taught in South Africa and, do conferences and do a whole variety of things, including research within Africa as well. And so since the COVID pandemic has happened, things have been pretty restrictive about traveling, especially to South Africa. You probably have seen the news on some of that. The country essentially locked down at various times and so forth. So that is a bit of who I am. You can find other courses that I teach easily enough. I try to bring African philosophy into places where it doesn't obviously, I won't say doesn't fit, but people normally would not necessarily think that it has something to say in some of these other areas. So I think there's a contribution to be made on questions around technology, for example. And people are often surprised at the kind of level of technological innovation, including digital technology, within the continent of Africa. And so, I think there's a lot to be offered. If you've taken my African Humanities course, you know that my goal in that course has been to really get people to see Africa in a new way, not as a place of war or a famine or just a general basket case, but of a place of innovation, creativity, vibrant people, as well as a history of colonialism, slavery, apartheid, all of those horrors of humanity. Many of those have been played out upon the continent and upon the people who have been scattered around the world. And much of that continues to this day, and much of that continues to need a way of being addressed. And so some of those kinds of questions also will be coming up within the course that we have. So I am very happy that you're on this trip with me through African philosophy. What you need to realize, understand is we are going to scratch the surface, right? There's so much that we could do, and in the space of one term, we're not going to be able to, go all that deep into a lot of different things. There are some things that we're going to, barely mention, I would say. I will try and, bring your attention to as many different kinds of approaches within African philosophy as possible. But it is a big space of thought, and so we are going to try and do justice as much as we can to that. So that's a bit of who I am, and I will talk more directly about the syllabus and other issues in connection with the course in other videos. But thanks so much for being with me on this trip. I'm really looking forward to it.